Attention in the station, we have a simulated crash. I repeat, a simulated crash. Area Delta 4, we have a UH-60, 3 persons on board, 200 gallons of fuel, unknown injuries, 5 reported at the scene.
This call is for a simulated crash, a hands-on training exercise, but it could have been an urgent request for assistance at an actual crash. That's why emergency responders must be ready before answering a genuine emergency call where lives are at stake. By using an actual aircraft and crew in a controlled environment, these emergency responders learn firsthand the proper firefighting techniques and procedures. It also helps build the confidence they'll need to successfully face a real aircraft emergency. Advanced knowledge of the constantly changing aircraft systems and controls are essential, requiring intense ongoing training. No two accidents are ever the same. Weather, location, and aircraft conditions will vary, requiring quick assessment at the site. For instance, the senior fire officer for this drill decided that 50 feet was sufficient distance from the burning aircraft to set up a staging area for the wounded. His assessment took into account not only the calm winds, but also the readily accessible roads and landing area for air evacuation. Bystanders and others not directly involved in fighting the fire must be kept away from the immediate area. Inhalation of toxic fumes put off by burning composite materials can cause headaches, burning eyes, vomiting, or even worse. Aviation crash rescue is a highly technical profession. The knowledge required to work effectively around aircraft in an emergency situation can be gained only through experience and intense training. This staged training exercise allows participants a valuable opportunity to enhance their skills. At the same time, supervisors can evaluate their agencies and better determine areas for additional training. Here is video of an actual crash. This U-21 had a landing gear problem, and the crew had called ahead for an emergency landing. And all emergency responders were pre-positioned, awaiting the worst. They knew a landing like this could turn into immediate disaster. But sometimes real aircraft emergencies are not as dramatic as a training exercise. Fortunately, there were no injuries. The plane was repaired and put back into service. Here is a training exercise in which an out-of-service UH-1 helicopter is set ablaze. A very important point is made here, one that was mentioned briefly when we saw the female photographer directed away from the simulated aircraft crash. Modern aircraft use composite materials more than ever before. The disadvantage, however, is that the composite materials are subject to accident forces that can cause them to break up or burn. Rescuers must be aware that when this happens, light particles drift off into the air and smoke. These small particles can be inhaled and retained in the lungs. The particles can also irritate the eye tissues and even penetrate the skin. For this reason, all military services require that rescue and firefighting personnel wear self-contained breathing apparatus at all times. Aircraft rescue will become even more hazardous as new aircraft become part of the Army inventory. Some contains as much as 10 times the composite material contained in current aircraft. There are nearly a dozen different aircraft in the Army inventory. Firefighters need to be familiar with all of them. Continual training is the best way to gain this knowledge. While this video can never replace intense hands-on training, it's an excellent orientation of 7 current Army aircraft systems and controls. Certain firefighting procedures and techniques shown in this video, such as positioning of equipment and medical treatment, are general in nature. They are not intended as the standard. However, certain areas are common to all or most of the aircraft. The pilot's compartment is called the cockpit. When the terms right-hand side and left-hand side are used, assume that the speaker is sitting in the cockpit looking forward. Most pilot seatbelt systems have an inertia reel and the shoulder harness, allowing minimum resistance when in the normal mode. If there is a sudden jerk of more than 2 Gs, the harness will lock. A 2-position lock lever, usually on the left side of each seat, returns the harness to the normal mode. Some common controls in the cockpit are the collective, the cyclic, the tail rotor pedals, The Auxiliary Power Unit, or APU, is a small turbine engine that provides electrical and hydraulic power for ground operations and in-flight emergencies. The cabin consists of the cargo and passenger compartments. Propellers are on airplanes, which are also referred to as fixed-wing aircraft. Main rotor blades and tail rotor blades are on helicopters, which are also called rotary wing aircraft. If the engine of a helicopter is still running when you, as an emergency responder, arrive, you must use extreme caution. The main rotor blades could dip as low as 4 feet in gusty winds or on sloping terrain, and always avoid the tail rotor area. The tail rotor blades are close to the ground and nearly invisible when running. They become increasingly visible only as the engine is shutting down. Aircraft emergencies often result in only a precautionary landing, but emergency crews still respond, even though no emergency assistance is needed. Such situations can present hazards to rescuers. Never approach a running aircraft from the rear. Approach from the front at a 45-degree angle, and always keep the pilot in view. Walk up to at least 20 feet from where the blade tips stop, and wait for the pilot's okay. The pilot will adjust the flight controls to tilt the main rotor blades slightly to the rear. When the pilot feels there is sufficient and safe ground clearance, he will signal the fire officer in. In many aircraft, the fuel shutoff is electronically operated. The battery switch and battery disconnect must be the last steps taken. JP-8 is the grade of fuel used by the Army. Fire can travel on JP-8 700 to 800 feet per minute. In a mist, flames will spread even faster. To receive more information on crash rescue, or for crash rescue posters, Army emergency response agencies can contact the United States Army Safety Center at DSN 558-2062, Commercial 334-255-2062. Non-military emergency response agencies should contact their nearest Army Public Affairs office.